In a universe where entire civilizations tremble at the mention of ancient dragon lords, where galactic empires rise and fall based on the whims of beings older than stars themselves, the most powerful entity in known space sits in a small coffee shop on Earth, desperately trying to figure out why a simple human beverage has become his greatest obsession. What starts as curiosity about a strange brown liquid served by a cheerful barista named Maya becomes an interstellar incident that will reshape the balance of power across 17 different star systems. Because sometimes, the fate of the galaxy hinges not on massive space battles or political intrigue, but on whether someone remembers to add extra foam to a latte. This is the story of how humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology, our weapons, or our strategic minds, it's our ability to treat everyone, even ancient cosmic dragons, like they're just another customer who deserves a perfect cup of coffee and a moment of genuine kindness. The morning mist hung low over downtown Portland as Maya-chan unlocked the door to her small coffee shop, Cosmic Grounds. The brass bell above the entrance chimed softly, a sound that usually brought her comfort after 3 years of running this place. Today felt different somehow, though she couldn't put her finger on why. Maya flipped the sign from closed to open and began her usual routine. The espresso machine hummed to life, filling the air with its familiar mechanical symphony. She arranged the pastries in their display case, each one catching the early morning light streaming through the large windows. The shop was her sanctuary, a place where she could control the variables and create something perfect, one cup at a time. At precisely 7:30, her first regular customer would arrive. Mr. Henderson, a retired teacher who always ordered a medium dark roast with 2 sugars and a splash of cream. Then would come the college students, desperate for caffeine and cheap breakfast sandwiches. Maya knew their patterns, their preferences, their stories. It was a comfortable rhythm that had sustained her through the challenges of small business ownership. But today, at 7:25, the bell chimed. Maya looked up from the cash register to see a figure standing in her doorway, and her breath caught in her throat. The being was tall, easily 8 feet, with scales that shifted between deep emerald and midnight blue depending on how the light hit them. Its eyes were ancient amber, holding depths that seemed to contain the wisdom of millennia. Despite its clearly non-human features, it wore a perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit that somehow managed to accommodate what appeared to be small wing membranes along its back. Most people would have screamed. Maya Chen was not most people. "Good morning," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Welcome to Cosmic Grounds. What can I get started for you today?" The dragon, because that's clearly what this being was, tilted its magnificent head, studying her with those ancient eyes. When it spoke, its voice was like distant thunder, rich and resonant but carefully modulated to avoid breaking every piece of glass in the shop. "I confess uncertainty," the dragon said, each word chosen with deliberate care. "I have observed your species engaging in a ritual involving the consumption of a dark liquid. This establishment appears to be dedicated to such practices. I seek understanding." Maya blinked, processing this request. In her 3 years of operation, she'd served coffee to insomniacs, workaholics, first-date couples, and the occasional customer who was clearly having some kind of personal crisis. She'd never served coffee to what appeared to be a mythical creature, but customer service was customer service. "You want to try coffee," she said, not really a question. "Coffee," the dragon repeated, as if testing the word. "Yes. I believe that is the correct terminology." Maya moved to the espresso machine, her movements automatic while her mind raced. This was either the most elaborate practical joke in history, or she was about to serve coffee to an actual dragon. Either way, she was going to do it properly. "Do you have any preferences? Sweet, bitter, strong, mild? Any dietary restrictions I should know about?" The dragon's expression, as much as she could read on such an alien face, seemed amused. "I am unfamiliar with the parameters of this beverage. Perhaps you could recommend something suitable for a first experience?" Maya considered this. What did you serve to a dragon who had never had coffee? Something approachable but memorable. Something that would showcase what made coffee special without overwhelming an inexperienced palate. "I think I have just the thing," she said, reaching for her best beans. "A cappuccino. Espresso with steamed milk and foam. It's balanced, you get the coffee flavor, but the milk mellows it out. Plus, the foam makes it feel special." As she worked, Maya found herself falling into the meditative rhythm of caffeination. Grinding the beans, tamping the espresso, steaming the milk to the perfect temperature. She was aware of the dragon watching her every movement with intense focus, as if memorizing each step of the process. Your technique, the dragon observed, it appears ritualistic. Sacred, almost. Maya smiled as she poured the steamed milk, creating a simple leaf pattern in the foam. Some people would say it is sacred. Good coffee is about respect for the beans, for the process, for the person who's going to drink it. She slid the cup across the counter, the porcelain warm in the cool morning air. The dragon lifted it carefully, its clawed hands surprisingly gentle. Maya held her breath as the being brought the cup to its lips and took a tentative sip. The change was immediate and dramatic. The dragon's eyes widened, then slowly closed. A low rumbling sound emerged from its throat, not threatening, but something closer to a purr. When it opened its eyes again, there was something almost vulnerable in its expression. This is... The dragon paused, searching for words. I have traveled across galaxies. I have witnessed the birth of stars and the death of civilizations. I have tasted the nectar of flowers that bloom once every 1,000 years on distant worlds. But this is extraordinary. Maya felt a warm glow of pride. There were few things in life better than introducing someone to great coffee, even if that someone happened to be a dragon. I'm glad you like it, she said. Coffee has a way of bringing people together. It's one of humanity's better discoveries. The dragon took another sip, this one longer, more contemplative. Humanity, it repeated. Your species continues to surprise me. You show no fear, despite my appearance. You treat me as you would any other patron. Should I be afraid? Maya asked, genuinely curious. Most beings are, the dragon admitted. My kind is not known for casual social interactions. We are typically sought out for our wisdom, feared for our power, or avoided altogether. Rarely do we simply converse. Maya refilled the sugar dispensers while she talked, her hands keeping busy while her mind tried to process this surreal conversation. Well, you seem polite enough. And you appreciate good coffee, which automatically puts you in my good books. The dragon made that purring sound again. Your species possesses a remarkable quality. You find the sacred in the mundane. You take simple elements, water, ground plant matter, and transform them into something approaching transcendence. It's just coffee, Maya said, though she was pleased by the compliment. Nothing is just anything to those who understand its true nature, the dragon replied. I begin to see why your species has such potential. Maya was about to ask what the dragon meant by that when the bell chimed again. Mr. Henderson shuffled in, newspaper under one arm, already reaching for his wallet. He nodded politely to Maya, then did a double take at her other customer. Morning, Maya. Interesting friend you've got there. Maya glanced between Mr. Henderson and the dragon, waiting for panic, screaming, or at least some kind of dramatic reaction. Instead, the retired teacher simply waited patiently for his turn to order. The dragon looked equally perplexed by this lack of reaction. Your species, the dragon said slowly, are they typically so accepting of unusual circumstances? Mr. Henderson chuckled. Son, I taught high school for 40 years. Takes a lot more than a well-dressed dragon to rattle me. Besides, if Maya's serving you coffee, you can't be all that dangerous. Maya poured Mr. Henderson his usual while trying not to laugh at the dragon's bewildered expression. Like I said, coffee brings people together. The dragon finished its cappuccino and placed the empty cup on the counter with reverent care. I find myself in debt to your establishment, Maya Chen. It's just $4.50, Maya said, then paused. Do you have Earth currency? The dragon reached into its suit jacket and produced a small, perfectly cut gemstone that seemed to contain its own inner light. Will this suffice? Maya stared at the stone, which was probably worth more than her entire coffee shop. That's way too much for a cappuccino. Consider the excess a token of appreciation for a transcendent experience, the dragon said. I will return tomorrow, if that is acceptable. I find myself curious about other variations of this coffee. Of course, Maya said, carefully taking the gemstone.
Same time?
Earlier, perhaps.
I wish to observe your morning ritual in its entirety.
As the dragon moved toward the door, Mr. Henderson called out, "Nice meeting you, friend."
See you around.
The dragon paused, looking back with an expression Maya was learning to read as surprise.
Yes.
Perhaps you shall. After the dragon left, Maya stood holding the gemstone, trying to process what had just happened.
Mr.
Henderson sipped his coffee peacefully, as if serving mythical creatures was just part of her regular morning routine. "Interesting fellow," he said eventually.
Yeah, Maya agreed. I think tomorrow's going to be very different.
She had no idea how different. 3 star systems away, in a council chamber floating in the void between galaxies, emergency sessions were being called. Dragon Lord Zephyros, Supreme Commander of the Galactic Coalition and, arguably the most powerful being in known space, had missed his scheduled appearance at the Andromeda Trade Summit. His flagship had been detected in Earth's solar system, but all attempts at communication had been ignored. The galaxy's most important political and military leaders were in panic. Wars had started over less than a missing Dragon Lord.
Trade routes were being rerouted. Defense fleets were being mobilized. All because the most powerful dragon in the universe had decided he really wanted to try more of Maya's coffee. But Maya didn't know any of that yet.
She simply cleaned the cappuccino cup, admiring how the dragon had drunk every last drop, and began preparing for what she expected would be just another normal day at Cosmic Grounds. She was, of course, completely wrong. By closing time, she would have 3 more dragon customers, a line of curious aliens stretching around the block, and a very confused call from someone claiming to be with the Galactic Health Department asking about her business license for interstellar beverage service. But, for now, Maya Chen simply hummed to herself as she steamed milk for Mrs. Patterson's vanilla latte, completely unaware that she had just served coffee to the most important being in the galaxy, and that her little coffee shop was about to become the unofficial embassy for human-alien relations. The gemstone sat on her counter, catching the light and occasionally pulsing with colors that definitely weren't found in any earthly spectrum. Maya made a mental note to have it appraised, though she suspected no earthly jeweler would know quite what to make of it. Outside, Portland continued its normal morning routine. Traffic moved, people hurried to work, and life proceeded exactly as it had for years. None of them noticed the sleek, impossible ships that had begun entering Earth's atmosphere, drawn by rumors that their supreme commander had found something on this backwater planet worth his personal attention. Maya served coffee, made change, and chatted with her regulars, blissfully unaware that she had just started an interstellar incident that would reshape the political landscape of 17 different star systems. All because she made a really good cappuccino.
Maya arrived at Cosmic Grounds the next morning to find a line. Not just any line, a line that stretched around the building and disappeared into the early morning mist. A line composed entirely of beings that definitely weren't human. She stood frozen on the sidewalk, keys in hand, staring at what appeared to be a gathering of every science fiction movie she'd ever seen. There were tall, elegant beings with silver skin and eyes like stars. Creatures that looked like they were made of living crystal. Something that might have been a tree of trees had multiple faces and wore business suits. And, at the front of the line, looking perfectly content, was her dragon from yesterday. "Good morning, Maya Chen," the dragon called out in that rumbling voice. "I took the liberty of informing a few associates of your establishment's excellence. I hope this is acceptable." Maya looked at the line of alien beings, all waiting patiently for her to open. Some were checking what looked like interdimensional smartphones. Others were engaged in quiet conversation in languages that sounded like music mixed with mathematics. "How many is a few?" Maya asked weakly. "Approximately 47, the dragon said. Though I expect the number may grow throughout the day." Maya unlocked her door, her mind racing. She had enough coffee for maybe 20 customers on a busy day. Her espresso machine, while reliable, wasn't designed for industrial scale production. And she was pretty sure her liability insurance didn't cover serving alien life forms. But customer service was customer service. "All right everyone," Maya called out, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "We're opening up."
Please form an orderly line, and I'll do my best to serve everyone.
The dragon entered first, followed by a being that looked like it was carved from living moonstone.
I have been contemplating your beverage choices, the dragon said. Today, I wish to experience something different.
Any preferences?
Maya asked, falling back into her routine as her hands automatically began the opening procedures. Something stronger, the dragon said.
More intense. Maya nodded, reaching for her darkest roast.
Double espresso.
No milk, no sugar. Just pure coffee.
As she worked, Maya became aware that every being in her shop was watching her with intense fascination. The moonstone creature had its head tilted at an angle that would have been impossible for a human, studying her every movement. A being that looked like a humanoid made of shifting geometric patterns was recording everything with some kind of crystalline device. Your technique, the moonstone being said in a voice like wind chimes, it is unchanged despite our presence.
Most servants alter their behavior when serving their betters. Maya paused in her grinding, looking up sharply. Excuse me? The dragon's eyes flashed with what Maya was learning to recognize as amusement. Zithara comes from a highly stratified society. She means no offense.
Actually, I think I do mean offense, Maya said, her voice cooling several degrees. I don't have betters or lessers in my shop. I have customers. If you can't treat everyone here with basic respect, including me, you're welcome to find coffee elsewhere. The silence that followed was deafening. Every being in the shop had gone completely still, as if Maya had just declared war on the universe. Then, the dragon began to laugh. It wasn't a human laugh, it was like distant thunder rolling across mountains, rich and deep and genuinely delighted. Magnificent, the dragon said.
Absolutely magnificent.
Zithara, you have just been educated in human social protocols by a master practitioner. The moonstone being Zithara looked between Maya and the dragon with what might have been confusion.
She corrected me? A lesser being corrected my behavior?
I'm a business owner correcting a customer's rudeness, Maya said firmly.
And I'll do it again if necessary.
Maya finished preparing the double espresso and slid it across the counter to the dragon, who accepted it with what she was coming to recognize as his version of a smile.
Observe and learn, my dear Zithara, the dragon said before taking a sip.
His eyes immediately went wide, and that deep purring sound emerged from his throat again.
This is remarkably intense. Like concentrated starlight.
That's Ethiopian single origin, Maya explained, already starting on the next order.
Grown at high altitude, natural processing. It's got notes of dark chocolate and blueberry, with a bright acidity. The geometric being stepped forward. I am flux pattern 779.
I metabolize energy directly.
Can your beverage be adapted for my physiology? Maya considered this. Can you process caffeine? Unknown.
I have never attempted to ingest organic compounds.
Well, Maya said, reaching for her most experimental blend, we'll start small. Cold brew with a light roast, minimal extraction. If you can handle that, we'll adjust from there. As the morning progressed, Maya found herself conducting an impromptu lesson in coffee science. Each alien species required different considerations.
The crystalline beings could only process liquid at room temperature. The tree-like creature needed its coffee diluted to 1/10 normal strength.
The beings who looked like living starlight could only interact with the coffee through some kind of electromagnetic field manipulation.
But every single one of them was fascinated by the process. Your species, observed a creature that looked like a cross between an octopus and a tornado, treats this as both art and science. Good coffee is both, Maya agreed, steaming milk for what she decided to call a low-gravity cappuccino for a customer who floated 3 feet off the ground. It's chemistry, physics, biology, and creativity all working together. And patience, added the dragon, who was now on his third different coffee variety. I observe that you do not rush the process, even with such a lengthy queue.
Maya looked up from the espresso machine.
The line outside hadn't gotten shorter, if anything, it had gotten longer.
She could see beings that definitely weren't from anywhere in Earth's solar system, all waiting patiently for their turn. Quality takes time, Maya said. Every cup deserves attention. Even for beings you've never encountered before?
Especially for beings I've never encountered before, Maya said.
First impressions matter. It was around noon when things got complicated.
Maya was preparing what she was privately calling an interdimensional frappe for a customer who existed in several dimensions simultaneously when three new figures entered the shop. Unlike her other customers, these beings radiated authority in a way that made Maya's survival instincts sit up and take notice. They were tall, elegant, and completely hairless, with skin that shifted between different metallic colors. Their clothes looked like they cost more than Maya's entire building, and they carried themselves with the kind of arrogance that suggested they were used to being the most important people in any room. Dragon Lord Zephyros, the lead figure, said in a voice like cold steel, "The Galactic Council requires your immediate presence." The coffee shop went dead silent. Maya noticed that several of her customers had suddenly developed a very keen interest in their beverages, while others were edging toward the exits. The dragon Zephyros, apparently, slowly turned from the counter where he'd been observing Maya's coffee-making technique. "Council Member Vex," he said, his voice noticeably cooler.
"How unexpected.
I was not aware that the council had jurisdiction over my personal time."
"Your personal time?" Vex's metallic skin shifted to an angry bronze color. "You missed the Andromeda Trade Summit. 17 different species are demanding explanations."
"Wars have nearly started because of your absence." "Wars have nearly started because those species lack patience and perspective," Zephyros replied calmly. "I am engaged in research."
"Research?" Vex looked around the coffee shop with obvious disdain. "In this primitive establishment?"
Maya felt her temper flare. She'd been handling alien customers all morning with patience and professionalism, but she drew the line at anyone calling her shop primitive. "Excuse me," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "But you're being rude to my customers and insulting my business."
"I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice or leave." The silence that followed was even more profound than before. Vex stared at Maya as if she'd just sprouted additional heads. "You, a primitive being, dare to correct me?"
"I'm a business owner asking a disruptive customer to show some basic courtesy," Maya said, her voice steady despite her racing heart.
"It's not complicated."
Vex's skin shifted to a deep, angry red.
"Do you have any idea who I am?"
"I am Council Member Vex of the Galactic Coalition. I command fleets that could reduce your pathetic planet to ash." Maya felt the temperature in the room drop several degrees.
Every one of her alien customers was now watching with intense focus. But, instead of being intimidated, Maya found herself getting angrier.
"I don't care if you're the Emperor of the Universe," she said firmly.
"In my shop, you treat people with respect or you leave."
"That includes me, my customers, and anyone else who walks through that door." Zephyros made a sound that might have been a chuckle. "Council Member Vex, you have just encountered one of humanity's most remarkable qualities. They possess an absolute commitment to their principles, regardless of the power differential involved."
"This is absurd," Vex snapped.
"You will return to your duties immediately, Zephyros. The Council demands it." "The Council," Zephyros said, taking another leisurely sip of his coffee, "can make their demands after I finish my research."
"Maya, might I try that cold brew preparation you mentioned earlier?"
"Of course," Maya said, grateful for the distraction. As she prepared the cold brew, she could feel the tension radiating from the council members.
"This is your final warning, Zephyros," Vex said. "Return with us now, or face the consequences."
Zephyros set down his cup and turned to face the council members fully. For the first time since Maya had met him, she could feel the power radiating from him, ancient, vast, and barely contained.
The air itself seemed to thicken.
"Council Member Vex," Zephyros said, his voice now carrying the weight of mountains, "you seem to be under the impression that you can issue ultimatums to me."
"Allow me to clarify, I am not your subordinate. I am not your employee.
I am the Supreme Commander of the Galactic Coalition by right of conquest, achievement, and the democratic choice of 1,000 species.
If you believe you can compel my actions through threats, you are welcome to try." The coffee shop fell so silent Maya could hear her refrigerator humming.
Vex and his companions had gone completely still, their metallic skin flickering rapidly through different colors. Furthermore, Zephyros continued, if I hear that any member of the council has taken action against this establishment, this planet, or this remarkable human in retaliation for my choices, I will consider it a declaration of war against me personally.
Are we clear? Vex's skin had gone a sickly green color. You would threaten the entire Galactic Council over a coffee shop?
I would protect something of value from those too short-sighted to recognize it, Zephyros replied.
Now, unless you intend to order a beverage, I suggest you leave. You're disturbing the other customers.
The council members retreated, but Vex paused at the door.
This isn't over, Zephyros.
No, the dragon agreed.
It isn't.
But perhaps next time you'll remember that threats and ultimatums work poorly on beings who have nothing to fear from you. After they left, the coffee shop remained silent for a long moment. Then, one by one, Maya's alien customers began to speak in hushed, odd tones.
Did he just threaten the entire Galactic Council? Whispered Zithara. Over a coffee shop, confirmed Flux Pattern 779. That, said the octopus tornado being, was the most magnificently irrational display of principle over pragmatism I have ever witnessed.
Maya looked at Zephyros, who had returned to sipping his coffee as if nothing had happened.
So, she said carefully, you're kind of a big deal in space politics?
Zephyros made that purring sound again.
Maya-chan, I am what your species would call a galactic emperor.
I command fleets, rule star systems, and my word can reshape the fate of civilizations. Maya processed this information while cleaning her espresso machine.
And, you're spending your time in my coffee shop because,
Zephyros said, in all my travels across the galaxy, through all my encounters with the greatest minds and most advanced civilizations, I have never experienced anything like what you create here.
It is not merely the beverage, though that is exceptional. It is the entire experience.
The care, the attention, the absolute commitment to excellence regardless of the customer's status or power. He gestured to the other customers, who were all listening intently.
Look around you, Maya.
In this small establishment, you have created something that the entire Galactic Coalition has struggled to achieve for millennia. Beings from dozens of different species, with completely different biologies, social structures, and values, all coexisting peacefully. All treated with equal respect and attention.
Maya looked around her shop, seeing it with new eyes.
The crystalline beings were having an animated conversation with the floating creatures about the quantum mechanics of coffee extraction.
Zithara was teaching the geometric beings about proper milk steaming technique.
The tree-like customer was sharing its herbal knowledge with anyone who would listen. They're not here just for the coffee, Maya realized. They are here for the experience of being treated as individuals worthy of respect and attention, regardless of their species, power, or social status, Zephyros confirmed.
You have created something remarkable, Maya-chan.
A place where the universal language is not fear, or power, or commerce, but simple, genuine hospitality.
Maya felt a warm glow of pride, tempered by a growing sense of responsibility.
If what Zephyros was saying was true, her little coffee shop had somehow become something much more significant than she'd ever intended.
What happens now? She asked.
Zephyros smiled, the first fully human-like expression she'd seen from him.
Now, Maya-chan, we continue to serve excellent coffee.
And, perhaps, if we're very fortunate, we help the galaxy remember that the most powerful force in the universe is not conquest or domination, but the simple act of treating each being with dignity and respect.
Maya nodded, already reaching for the next order. One interdimensional latte coming up. Outside, more ships were arriving.
Word was spreading across the galaxy about the small coffee shop on Earth where the Supreme Commander of the Galactic Coalition had found something worth protecting. Some came out of curiosity, others seeking to understand what could possibly be so important about a human beverage service.
But Maya didn't know about any of that yet.
She was too busy perfecting a new brewing method for a customer who metabolized caffeine through photosynthesis and wanted to know if she could create liquid sunlight. She was pretty sure she could figure it out. After all, customer service was customer service. By the third day, Maya had learned several important things about running an interstellar coffee shop. First, alien metabolism was incredibly diverse.
The Heliarch delegation required coffee heated to temperatures that would vaporize human flesh.
The void swimmers could only consume liquids in a perfect vacuum. And the beings from Kepler 442b needed their beverages to be exactly 3.7 degrees Celsius or they would enter hibernation.
Second, universal translators had trouble with coffee terminology.
Espresso kept being translated as concentrated liquid energy weapon, which had caused 3 diplomatic incidents and 1 unfortunate military response. Third, her little coffee shop was rapidly becoming the unofficial embassy for human-alien relations, whether she wanted it to be or not. Maya discovered this last point when she arrived at Cosmic Grounds on Wednesday morning to find a line that wrapped around 6 city blocks and included what appeared to be several news crews from species she couldn't even identify.
"This is getting out of hand," she muttered, unlocking the door to find Zephyros waiting inside. "Good morning, Maya," the dragon said calmly.
He was reading what looked like a newspaper made of light. "I took the liberty of arriving early to avoid the crowds."
"I hope you don't mind. How did you get in?" Maya asked, though at this point she wasn't really surprised by anything.
"Ancient dragon privilege," Zephyros said with that rumbling chuckle.
"Also, your lock is surprisingly simple to manipulate with applied thermodynamics."
Maya started her opening routine, trying to ignore the crowds gathering outside.
"Zephyros, we need to talk. This is getting bigger than I can handle. I'm a coffee shop owner, not a diplomat."
"And, yet," Zephyros observed, "you have accomplished more in 3 days than most diplomats manage in decades."
"Do you know what happened after yesterday's incident with the council?" Maya poured beans into the grinder. "I assume they were upset about being told to leave?" 17 different species formally requested permission to establish trade relations with Earth. 5 more have applied for embassy status.
And 3 separate galactic newspapers have published editorials calling for a fundamental review of how the coalition treats smaller civilizations.
Maya paused in her grinding. "Because of what happened in my coffee shop."
"Because of how you handled what happened in your coffee shop," Zephyros corrected. "Word has spread throughout the galaxy about the human who told Council Member Vex that basic courtesy applies to everyone, regardless of their power level." The bell chimed, and Maya looked up to see a being she didn't recognize. This one looked like it was made of flowing mercury, constantly shifting and reforming itself while maintaining a roughly humanoid shape.
"Ambassador Flux," Zephyros said, inclining his head slightly. "You're early."
"The situation has escalated, Supreme Commander," the mercury being said in a voice like flowing water. "I bring word from the Confederation of Free Worlds. They are requesting formal diplomatic contact with Earth, specifically through this establishment."
Maya looked between them.
"I'm sorry, but I think there's been some confusion.
I'm not a diplomat. I just serve coffee."
"You serve more than coffee," Ambassador Flux said, studying her with what might have been curiosity.
"You serve respect, dignity, equality.
These are concepts that many of our civilizations have forgotten in the pursuit of power and expansion."
"I really just serve coffee," Maya insisted. "Good coffee, but still just coffee." "Maya," Zephyros said gently, "may I show you something?"
He gestured toward the large windows facing the street. Maya looked out and immediately understood why the line had gotten so much longer.
The beings waiting weren't just customers anymore. Many of them wore what appeared to be official diplomatic insignia.
Others carried recording devices. And several were clearly military personnel from various species.
"They're not all here for coffee," Maya realized. "No," Zephyros confirmed.
"They're here because word has spread that there's a place in the galaxy where every being, regardless of species, status, or political affiliation, is treated with identical respect and courtesy. Where a human will tell a Galactic Council member to mind their manners with the same firmness they would use on any rude customer."
Ambassador Flux rippled with what might have been approval.
"Your species has a reputation throughout the galaxy, Maya Chen.
You are known as the Equalizers." "The what now?"
"Humans have a unique tendency to ignore social hierarchies when they conflict with your sense of fairness," Ambassador Flux explained.
"Most species develop complex social structures based on power, age, genetics, or achievement. Humans seem to believe that basic dignity should be universal. Maya started making Zephyros his usual morning double espresso. That doesn't seem particularly unique. It is extraordinarily unique, Zephyros said seriously. Most civilizations treat courtesy as a privilege to be earned or a tool for advancement. You treat it as a right to be assumed. It's refreshing. The bell chimed again, and this time Maya groaned internally. 3 more council members entered, followed by what appeared to be a small army of officials and recording personnel. Council member Vex, Zephyros said without looking up from his newspaper. How unexpected. Vex had traded his angry bronze coloration for what Maya was learning to recognize as diplomatic silver. Supreme Commander. Ambassador Flux. And Maya Chen. Maya noticed the slight pause before her name and felt her temperature rising again. Council member Vex. Are you here to order coffee or cause more problems? I am here, Vex said stiffly, to formally apologize for yesterday's misunderstanding. Maya blinked. Whatever she'd been expecting, it wasn't that. Additionally, Vex continued, the Galactic Council has voted to formally recognize Earth as a sovereign world with full diplomatic rights. We would like to establish formal relations through your establishment, if you would consent to serve as an unofficial cultural liaison. Me? Maya squeaked. I don't know anything about galactic politics. Exactly, said one of the other council members, a being that looked like a cross between a peacock and a geometric theorem. Political knowledge can be taught. The ability to treat all beings with equal respect while maintaining clear boundaries, that appears to be innate to your species. Zephyros made his approving purr sound. They're offering you a position as Earth's first xenological cultural ambassador, Maya. You would essentially be doing what you're already doing, but with official recognition and support. Maya looked around her coffee shop, which was rapidly filling with the most important beings from across the galaxy, all waiting patiently in line for coffee and apparently wanting her to represent her entire species in interstellar diplomacy. Do I get to keep serving coffee? She asked. The coffee service would be central to your diplomatic function, Vex assured her. Our xenopsychologists have determined that the ritual of shared beverage consumption creates optimal conditions for honest communication and conflict resolution. Plus, Zephyros added with amusement, no one wants to risk losing access to your espresso by starting a war. Maya considered this. On one hand, it sounded terrifying and completely beyond her qualifications. On the other hand, she'd been handling interstellar customer service for 3 days now, and it hadn't been that different from handling human customer service. What would this actually involve, she asked. Ambassador Flux flowed forward slightly. Essentially, you would continue operating your establishment as you have been. Various species and governments would send representatives to conduct informal diplomatic discussions over coffee. You would facilitate communication, help resolve misunderstandings, and generally serve as a neutral party for interspecies dialogue. And make sure everyone follows basic courtesy rules, added the Peacock Theorem being. Your ability to maintain social order while serving beings of vastly different power levels has not gone unnoticed. Maya made herself a coffee while she thought. It was her special blend, a medium roast with hints of chocolate and caramel, perfectly balanced and comforting. As she sipped it, she watched her current customers. Zephyros was patiently explaining coffee chemistry to a being made of crystallized light. The Heliarch delegation was having a heated but polite debate with the Void Swimmers about optimal brewing temperatures. 2 species who were apparently traditional enemies were sharing a table and arguing good-naturedly about whether milk should be steamed or frothed. They were all here because they'd found something they couldn't get anywhere else in the galaxy, a place where everyone was treated the same, where status didn't matter, and where the only requirements for service were basic politeness and an appreciation for good coffee. Okay, Maya said finally. I'll do it. But I have conditions. Vex's metallic skin shifted to an interested blue. Name them. First, this stays a coffee shop. I'm not turning cosmic grounds into some sterile diplomatic facility. It stays exactly as it is. Agreed, Vex said immediately. Second, my rules apply to everyone. I don't care if you're the emperor of the universe, if you're rude to my customers or staff, you're out. Zephyros chuckled. I can personally vouch for the effectiveness of that policy. Third, I need help. I can't serve the entire galaxy by myself. I'm going to need staff, equipment, and probably a much larger supply of coffee beans. The coalition will provide whatever support you require, Vex assured her. And, finally, Maya said, looking directly at each of the council members, I want it clearly understood that I represent Earth's values here. That means everyone gets treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their species, politics, or power level. If the council has a problem with that approach, they can find another cultural liaison. The silence stretched for several seconds. Then, Vex's skin shifted to what Maya had learned was amused gold. Maya Chen, he said formally, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I officially appoint you as Earth's Xenological Cultural Ambassador and Director of Interspecies Diplomatic Relations. May your coffee shop become a beacon of understanding throughout the galaxy. The entire shop erupted in what Maya assumed were various species versions of applause. The crystallized light being flashed in complex patterns. The Heliarch delegation sang in harmonious tones. The void swimmers made sounds like distant supernovas. Congratulations, Zephyros said, raising his coffee cup in a toast. You are now officially the most important barista in galactic history. Maya looked around her coffee shop, her diplomatic embassy, and felt a mixture of pride and terror. What have I gotten myself into? Something remarkable, Ambassador Flux assured her. The Confederation has already prepared a list of trade agreements they would like to discuss over coffee. And, the Mechanical Collective wants to learn about espresso brewing techniques, added the Peacock Theorem being. They believe there may be applications for their manufacturing processes. The hive minds are fascinated by the concept of individual beverage preferences, Vex contributed. They've requested a full consultation on customization versus standardization. Maya started her espresso machine and began grinding beans for what she suspected would be the busiest day of her career. Well, she said, I guess we'd better get started. What can I get everyone? As the galaxy's most important beings lined up to order coffee from Earth's newest diplomat, Maya couldn't help but smile. She'd wanted to create a place where everyone felt welcome and appreciated. She'd just never expected that everyone would include the entire known universe. Outside, more ships were arriving hourly. News crews from a dozen different species were setting up broadcasting equipment. Street vendors had appeared, selling snacks compatible with various alien digestive systems. The mayor of Portland was reportedly having a nervous breakdown. But, inside Cosmic Grounds, Maya Chen was doing what she'd always done, serving excellent coffee, treating every customer with respect, and creating a space where beings could come together over a shared appreciation for the perfect cup. It was just that now, the fate of interstellar diplomacy might depend on whether she remembered to use oat milk instead of regular milk for the lactose-intolerant delegation from Proxima Centauri. No pressure at all. Maya's new reality as an intergalactic diplomat came with perks she hadn't expected and challenges she definitely hadn't signed up for. The perks included unlimited access to coffee beans from across the galaxy, a staff of enthusiastic alien assistants who were fascinated by human brewing techniques, and the knowledge that she was probably the only person in human history who could honestly say her coffee had prevented 3 separate interstellar wars. The challenges included managing a coffee shop that now served approximately 400 customers daily, learning the dietary restrictions of 73 different species, and discovering that some galactic conflicts were a lot more complicated than she'd initially realized. This last point became crystal clear on Friday morning when 2 groups of customers walked into Cosmic Grounds and the temperature in the room immediately dropped by 10 degrees. Maya looked up from the elaborate cold brew system she was operating for the thermal-sensitive coalition to see 2 delegations facing each other across her shop with expressions that didn't require universal translation. The group near the door was composed of tall, elegant beings with feathers that shifted through different metallics and eyes like molten gold. The group by the windows looked like armored bears crossed with spaceships, all angles and mechanical augmentations. "Uh-oh," whispered Kip, her newest assistant. Kip was from a species called the Verdant, looked like a humanoid made of living moss, and had an uncanny ability to sense when diplomatic situations were about to explode. "The sovereignty," Zephyros murmured from his usual seat at the counter. He'd taken to spending most of his mornings at Cosmic Grounds, claiming it was the best place to monitor galactic affairs. And the Iron Collective. This is problematic. Problematic how? Maya asked, though she was already moving toward the counter.
Experience had taught her that getting between potentially hostile customers was easier when you had a solid piece of furniture as a barrier.
They'd been at war for approximately 300 years, Zephyros explained quietly. Territorial disputes, resource conflicts, fundamental disagreements about the nature of civilization.
Their species are biologically incompatible for the same environmental conditions, psychologically opposed in terms of social structure, and they've recently been fighting over mining rights in the neutral zone.
Maya watched as both groups continued their silent standoff.
The sovereignty delegation had arranged themselves in a perfect formation that somehow managed to be both beautiful and threatening. The Iron Collective had spread out to cover all the exits and were making mechanical noises that Maya suspected were not friendly.
Wonderful, Maya muttered.
And they decided to bring their centuries-old blood feud to my coffee shop because, said the lead sovereignty representative, speaking without taking his golden eyes off the collective, we heard that this establishment serves as a neutral meeting ground where all beings are treated equally.
We came seeking diplomatic discourse.
We came seeking the same, rumbled one of the Iron Collective in a voice like grinding gears. We did not expect to find our enemies here. Maya looked between the two groups, acutely aware that every other customer in her shop had gone very, very still. Even the normally chattery delegation from the Gossip Nebula had fallen silent.
Okay, Maya said, falling back on her customer service training. You're both here for coffee and conversation. That's great. I can work with that. But I need everyone to understand the house rules.
Both groups turned to look at her with expressions that somehow managed to be threatening and curious at the same time.
First rule, no fighting in my shop.
I don't care what your history is outside these walls, inside cosmic grounds everyone treats everyone else with basic civility.
Second rule, you wait your turn like everyone else. Third rule, if you can't be polite to other customers, you leave.
The sovereignty leader tilted his head, feathers shifting to what Maya had learned was their version of surprise.
You would dare to impose restrictions on the eternal sovereignty?
I would dare to ask customers to follow basic social rules, Maya replied firmly.
Same as I would for anyone else.
The Iron Collective leader made a sound like a steam engine.
And if we refuse to share space with these parasites?
Maya felt her temper flare. She'd been dealing with interstellar politics for a week now, and she was getting tired of beings who thought their conflicts gave them permission to be rude.
Then, you leave, she said simply. I'm not running a battlefield, I'm running a coffee shop. If you want to fight, do it somewhere else.
If you want coffee, get in line and act like civilized beings. The silence that followed was profound.
Maya could hear the hum of her espresso machine, the quiet conversations of other customers, and what sounded like Kip holding his breath. Then, Zephyros stood up.
The dragon moved slowly, deliberately, until he was standing between Maya and both delegations. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of mountains and the heat of stars. Perhaps, Zephyros said quietly, you should explain to Maya why you're really here. The sovereignty leader's feathers shifted to a nervous silver. Supreme Commander, you received intelligence that the Iron Collective was planning to establish diplomatic relations with Earth through this establishment, Zephyros continued. So you decided to arrive first and claim precedence. The Iron Collective leader's mechanical augmentations clicked and whirred. And they received similar intelligence about our intentions. Both sides are here to prevent the other from gaining an advantage. Maya stared at both groups.
You're not here for coffee at all. You're here to spy on each other.
We are here to ensure that our enemies do not gain unfair advantage through diplomatic manipulation, the sovereignty leader said stiffly. We are here to protect our interests from sovereignty aggression, the collective leader replied. Maya felt a familiar sensation, the same one she got when customers tried to return coffee cups they'd clearly been using for weeks, or when people attempted to pay for a $5 drink with obviously counterfeit money. It was her bullshit detector, and it was going off like a fire alarm.
Okay, Maya said, moving out from behind the counter. Everyone sit down. We're going to sort this out right now.
Maya, Zephyros said quietly, these beings have been at war for 3 centuries. They are not going to simply, everyone sit down, Maya repeated, using the voice she'd developed for dealing with unruly customers during the pre-holiday rush.
Now.
To her surprise, both delegations actually sat. The sovereignty arranged themselves with fluid grace at a table near the windows. The Iron Collective deployed themselves with mechanical precision at a table near the door. Maya grabbed a pot of her best coffee and 3 cups, then pulled up a chair between the 2 tables. "All right," she said, pouring coffee for herself.
"Let's talk. What exactly are you fighting about?"
The Iron Collective has been systematically expanding into territories that rightfully belong to the sovereignty, the leader said immediately. The sovereignty has been claiming ancient rights to systems they abandoned centuries ago, the collective leader replied.
They cannot expect to hold territory they do not occupy.
So it's a territorial dispute, Maya said, sipping her coffee. What territories specifically? For the next hour, Maya found herself conducting an impromptu mediation session between 2 interstellar civilizations. It quickly became clear that while both sides claimed the conflict was about territory, the real issues were much more complicated. The sovereignty were an ancient civilization that valued tradition, beauty, and cultural achievement. They had once controlled vast territories but had retreated to their core world centuries ago to focus on artistic and philosophical pursuits. Now they wanted their old territories back, not necessarily for expansion, but because they considered them culturally significant. The Iron Collective were a younger civilization that had developed through industrial achievement and technological innovation. They had built their society around efficiency, growth, and resource utilization. They had moved into the territories the sovereignty had abandoned and turned them into productive mining and manufacturing worlds.
"So let me get this straight," Maya said, refilling everyone's coffee.
"You want the territories back because they're historically important to your culture. And you want to keep the territories because you've spent centuries building infrastructure and communities there."
Both leaders nodded.
"And, instead of trying to find a compromise, you've been shooting at each other for 300 years.
Both leaders looked slightly embarrassed. "Have either of you ever actually visited these disputed territories to see what's there now?" Maya asked. "It is not necessary to visit them," the sovereignty leader said.
"They contain the ruins of our ancestral cities. We have detailed surveys of all resource extraction and industrial facilities," the collective leader replied.
"Physical visits are inefficient."
Maya stared at them. "So you're fighting a 300-year war over places neither of you has actually seen recently?"
"That is an oversimplification," the sovereignty leader said. "Is it?" Maya asked.
"Because it sounds to me like you're both making assumptions about what the other side wants instead of actually talking to each other." She stood up and went to the counter, returning with a tablet she used for inventory management.
"Kip, can you pull up those star charts the Federation sent us last week?"
Kip, who had been watching the proceedings with fascination, quickly accessed the requested files.
Maya spread the star charts across the table between both delegations.
"Show me," she said simply.
"Show me exactly what you're fighting over." What followed was one of the most educational hours of Maya's life.
As both sides pointed out their claims and concerns on the star charts, a pattern began to emerge. The territories they were fighting over fell into 3 categories: systems with historical sovereignty significance, systems with current collective infrastructure, and systems that neither side actually wanted but were fighting over out of principle. "Look at this," Maya said, pointing to one section of the chart. "These 5 systems here, you both claim them, but, according to this data, they're barely habitable for either of your species.
Why are you fighting over planets you can't actually use?" "Strategic position," both leaders said simultaneously, then glared at each other.
"Strategic position for what?"
"Neither of you want to expand in that direction.
The sovereignty retreated inward on purpose, and the collective is focused on resource-rich systems. These are just empty space with bad planets." Maya looked at both delegations, who were staring at the charts with expressions she was learning to recognize as dawning realization. "I have a proposal," she said. "What if we figured out a way for both of your civilizations to get what you actually want, instead of what you think the other side is trying to take away from you?"
"Explain," the collective leader said cautiously.
The sovereignty wants cultural preservation and recognition of historical significance. The collective wants efficient resource utilization and continued development of their infrastructure. What if instead of fighting over territory, you collaborated on preserving what's historically important while developing what's economically viable? Both leaders started to object, but Maya held up a hand. Hear me out. Some of those systems have both historical sites and resource potential. What if the sovereignty took responsibility for preserving and studying the cultural sites, while the collective managed resource extraction in the same systems? You'd both get what you want, and you'd each have the other's expertise helping with your projects. The silence stretched for several minutes. Maya could practically see both sides processing the implications. The collective would never agree to shared governance, the sovereignty leader said finally. The sovereignty would never accept industrial development near their cultural sites, the collective leader replied. Why not? Maya asked. You're both intelligent civilizations with advanced technology. Surely you can figure out how to mine asteroids without damaging archaeological sites. And surely preserving ancient knowledge could benefit technological development. Maya poured more coffee for everyone, letting them think. What you're suggesting, the sovereignty leader said slowly, is unprecedented cooperation between fundamentally incompatible civilizations. What I'm suggesting, Maya corrected, is that you stop assuming you're incompatible and start figuring out what you have in common. You both value achievement, you both want your civilizations to thrive, and you both care about legacy, you just define those things differently. The collective leader made us sound like a computer processing data. The efficiency gains from sovereignty historical knowledge could be significant. Their archives might contain location data for resource deposits we have not yet discovered. The sovereignty leader's feathers shifted to a thoughtful gold. And collective extraction technology might allow us to recover artifacts from sites we previously considered inaccessible. Plus, Maya added, think about what you could accomplish if you weren't spending all your resources on a war. The sovereignty could focus on cultural and artistic development. The collective could focus on technological advancement. And you'd both benefit from each other's expertise. Maya watched as both leaders looked at the star charts with new eyes, seeing not contested territory but potential collaboration. This would require significant negotiation, the sovereignty leader said. Treaties, agreements, oversight mechanisms. Extensive planning and resource allocation, the collective leader agreed. Risk assessment, timeline development, success metrics. Good thing, Maya said with a smile, you're both in a place that specializes in diplomatic conversation over excellent coffee. It took 3 more hours, 17 cups of coffee, 2 emergency calls to respective home governments, and 1 brief moment when Maya had to physically step between the delegations when they started arguing about mining quotas. But, by the time both groups left cosmic grounds, they had the framework for what would become known as the Sovereignty Collective Cooperative Development Agreement. How did you know that would work? Zephyros asked after they'd gone. Maya was cleaning coffee cups and trying not to think about the fact that she just helped end a 300-year war during her lunch break. Customer service, she said simply. Most of the time when people are fighting, it's not about what they say they're fighting about. It's about feeling like the other person isn't listening to what they actually need. And the coffee helped? Maya smiled. Good coffee makes everything better. Even interstellar diplomacy. Outside, both delegations were boarding their respective ships. But Maya noticed they were talking to each other as they left, rather than maintaining their hostile standoff. I think, Maya said to Kip, we're going to need a bigger coffee pot. Because word was already spreading across the galaxy that there was a human diplomat who could end centuries-old wars with caffeine and common sense. And Maya had the sinking feeling that her little coffee shop was about to get a lot busier. 6 months after serving her first cup of coffee to a dragon, Maya Chen stood in her newly expanded cosmic grounds and marveled at how completely her life had changed. The shop now occupied 3 buildings. The original location had been preserved exactly as it was, down to the brass bell above the door and the slightly wobbly table by the window where Zephyros still sat every morning. But it was now connected to 2 adjacent buildings that housed the diplomatic wing, the cultural exchange center, and what everyone had started calling the miracle kitchen, where Maya's expanded staff created beverages suitable for the digestive systems of over 200 different species. What amazed Maya most wasn't the size of the operation or the fact that she now employed representatives from 47 different civilizations. What amazed her was that it still felt like a coffee shop. Maya, called Zix, her assistant manager and one of the most competent beings she'd ever met, despite being made entirely of crystallized mathematics. The Temporal Alliance delegation is here for their weekly mediation session. Should I prepare the causality-neutral brewing chamber? Please, Maya replied, putting the finishing touches on a gravity-defiant latte for a customer who existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. And remind them that no temporal paradoxes during business hours. Last week's incident with the grandfather clause nearly broke my espresso machine. Maya had learned to handle the more exotic aspects of interstellar diplomacy with the same pragmatic approach she'd always used for difficult customers. Time travelers needed special brewing conditions? Fine, she'd invest in temporal shielding. Energy beings required electromagnetic containment for their beverages? No problem, she'd hire a quantum engineer. A delegation from a parallel universe wanted to establish trade relations? As long as they waited their turn and didn't try to retroactively unorder their drinks, Maya could work with that. The morning rush at Cosmic Grounds now began at 6 a.m. Galactic Standard Time and didn't slow down until well after local midnight. Maya had customers who scheduled diplomatic meetings 3 months in advance, just to guarantee a table. The waiting list for first contact consultations was backed up for 2 years. But, somehow, despite the crowds and the complexity and the fact that she was now technically the busiest diplomat in the known universe, Maya had managed to maintain the atmosphere that had made Cosmic Grounds special in the first place. "Excuse me," said a new voice, and Maya looked up to see a being she didn't recognize. This was unusual. After 6 months, she knew most of the galaxy's major diplomatic players by sight. The newcomer was tall, graceful, and appeared to be made of living starlight. When they moved, it was like watching constellations drift across the night sky. They wore what looked like formal robes woven from nebula dust, and their presence made the air itself seem more luminous. "Welcome to Cosmic Grounds," Maya said, automatically reaching for her special order brewing equipment. "I'm Maya. What can I get for you today?" "I am Luminos of the Celestial Directorate," the being said, their voice like distant solar winds. "I have traveled here seeking an audience with the one called Maya Chen, diplomat of the small things." Maya paused in her preparation routine. "Diplomat of the small things? Is that what people are calling me now?" "Throughout the galaxy," Luminos confirmed. "It is said that you have mastered the art of resolving great conflicts through attention to small details. That you can end wars with beverages and create peace with pastries." "I just serve good coffee," Maya said, though she was pleased by the compliment. "What can I do for the Celestial Directorate?" Luminos gestured toward a corner table where Maya noticed Zephyros was already waiting. "We have come seeking counsel on a matter of great importance. The Directorate faces a crisis that threatens the stability of our entire civilization." Maya grabbed her tablet and a fresh cup of her best medium roast. "Okay, let me guess. Ancient territorial disputes? Resource conflicts? Fundamental disagreements about the nature of existence?" "Something more complex," Luminos said as they settled at the table. "We are facing the collapse of our social structure due to a philosophical paradox that has divided our people into irreconcilable factions." Maya sat down and poured herself coffee from the pot she always kept ready. "Explain." For the next hour, Luminos outlined what was indeed a complex crisis. The Celestial Directorate was an ancient civilization of energy beings who had spent millennia in perfect harmony, sharing consciousness and making all decisions through consensus. But, recently, they had discovered that individual identity and collective unity were not mutually exclusive concepts, as they had always believed. This revelation had split their civilization. One faction wanted to maintain pure collective consciousness, fearing that individual identity would destroy their unity. Another faction wanted to embrace individual identity, believing it would strengthen their collective. A third faction wanted to find a middle path but couldn't agree on what that should look like. The result was complete paralysis, the first time in their species' history that they had been unable to reach consensus on anything.
And this is threatening your civilization how? Maya asked.
Without consensus, we cannot maintain the energy matrices that sustain our physical forms, Luminos explained.
Without agreement on fundamental questions of identity and purpose, our entire species risks dissolution into component energies. Maya sipped her coffee while she processed this.
So you're basically having an existential crisis that could literally cause your entire species to cease to exist. That is an accurate if simplified assessment, Luminos said.
Right, Maya said. Zephyros, what do you think?
The dragon, who had been listening quietly, made his thoughtful rumbling sound. It seems to me that the Celestial Directorate has encountered the same fundamental challenge that faces all developing civilizations, the balance between individual identity and collective responsibility.
Yes, Maya agreed.
But they're approaching it as an either-or question instead of a both-and question.
Explain, Luminos said. Maya stood up and walked to the counter, returning with 3 different types of coffee. This is single-origin Ethiopian, she said, pointing to the first cup. Grown on one specific farm, with a very distinctive flavor profile.
You can taste the individual terroir, the specific conditions that make it unique. She pointed to the second cup. This is our house blend.
5 different beans from 3 different continents, all roasted together.
Each bean contributes its unique characteristics, but the result is something that's greater than the sum of its parts.
And this?
Luminos asked, indicating the third cup. This is what happens when you try to make coffee without understanding either individual beans or how they work together, Maya said.
It's terrible.
Muddy, bitter, with no real character at all.
Luminos studied the 3 cups for a moment.
You suggest that individual identity and collective unity are not opposed concepts. I suggest that real unity comes from individuals who choose to work together while maintaining their individual strengths, Maya said.
Look around this coffee shop.
We've got customers from dozens of species, with completely different biology, psychology, and social structures.
But they coexist peacefully because they've found common ground while keeping what makes them unique.
But the Directorate has always functioned through perfect consensus, Luminos protested.
Individual identity would make consensus impossible. Would it? Maya asked. Or would it make consensus more meaningful? Anyone can agree when they don't have a choice. Real agreement happens when people choose to work together despite having different perspectives.
Zephyros leaned forward.
Maya makes an excellent point.
The strongest alliances in galactic history have been between species that maintained their individual cultures while finding common cause.
Maya watched Luminos process this information.
The being's starlight patterns shifted through different configurations, like watching a living constellation work through a complex equation.
You propose that the Directorate could maintain both individual identity and collective purpose, Luminos said finally.
I propose that individual identity might actually strengthen your collective purpose, Maya corrected.
Think about it, when everyone thinks exactly the same way, how do you solve new problems? How do you adapt to changing circumstances? Individual perspectives give you more tools to work with. But what about consensus? How do you make decisions when individuals have different opinions? Maya smiled.
The same way I run a coffee shop that serves 200 different species with completely different needs and preferences. You focus on shared values while accommodating individual differences. Over the next several hours, Maya found herself conducting one of the most complex diplomatic sessions of her career. She brought in other customers, the former enemies from the Sovereignty and Iron Collective, now successful partners in the Cooperative Development Project. The hive minds, who had learned to value individual member contributions while maintaining collective identity. The Federation of Free Worlds, whose entire government was based on unity through diversity. Each group shared their experiences with balancing individual and collective needs. They talked about the challenges, the benefits, and the practical mechanisms they developed to make it work. The key, explained Ambassador Flux, is distinguishing between core values that must be shared and individual expressions that can be diverse. We all agree on fundamental principles like respect for life and the importance of cooperation, but we express those principles differently based on our individual cultures and perspectives. Exactly, added the lead negotiator from the Sovereignty Collective Partnership. We maintain our distinct identities as civilizations, but we've found that our differences actually help us solve problems more effectively. The sovereignty brings historical perspective and cultural wisdom. The collective brings technological innovation and practical efficiency. Neither of us could achieve alone what we accomplished together. Luminos absorbed all of this information, their starlight patterns growing more complex and beautiful as they processed the possibilities. This would require fundamental changes to how the Directorate makes decisions, Luminos said finally. Most meaningful improvements do, Maya replied. But you don't have to change everything at once. Start small. Try allowing individual input on minor decisions while maintaining consensus on core values. See how it works. Adjust as you go. And if the factions cannot agree to try this approach? Maya shrugged. Then, you're no worse off than you are now. But, if they can agree to experiment, you might discover something amazing. Luminos stood, their robes shifting like Aurora Borealis. Maya Chen, diplomat of the small things, you have given the Directorate much to consider. With your permission, I would like to bring representatives from each faction here to continue this discussion. Of course, Maya said. But, I have one condition. Name it. Everyone orders coffee. I don't care if you're beings of pure energy, we'll figure out how to make you a beverage that works with your physiology. This is a coffee shop, and coffee shop rules apply. Luminos made a sound like distant stellar music that Maya had learned to recognize as laughter. It shall be as you say. After Luminos left, Maya found herself alone with Zephyros for the first time in weeks. So, the dragon said, sipping what Maya had learned was his favorite evening beverage, a decaffeinated cold brew with a hint of synthetic starlight flavor. How does it feel to be the most influential diplomat in galactic history? Maya looked around her expanded coffee shop. The evening crowd was smaller but no less diverse than the morning rush. A group of young beings from various species were studying together in one corner, sharing notes and inside jokes. Two elderly ambassadors were playing some kind of strategy game while drinking tea. A family of crystal beings was teaching their children how to properly appreciate the aroma of different coffee varieties. Honestly? Maya said. It feels like running a really big coffee shop with very complicated customers. And, are you happy with what you've built here? Maya considered this. When she'd first opened Cosmic Grounds, her goal had been simple: create a place where people could get excellent coffee in a comfortable, welcoming environment. Now she was running the unofficial diplomatic center for interstellar relations, with responsibilities that affected the lives of trillions of beings across the galaxy. But, at its core, she was still doing exactly what she'd always done, serving good coffee and treating everyone with respect. Yeah, Maya said. I think I am. We've built something good here. Something that helps people even if some of those people happen to be ancient energy beings or dragon emperors. Zephyros made his pleased rumbling sound. You have accomplished something remarkable, Maya Chen. You have created a place where the galaxy's most powerful beings come not to exercise their authority, but to remember what it feels like to be treated as individuals worthy of respect. Is that so unusual? Extraordinarily unusual, Zephyros said. Power tends to isolate. The more authority a being accumulates, the more they are surrounded by those who fear them, seek to use them, or want something from them. Rarely does anyone simply offer them a well-made beverage and ask if they'd like a pastry to go with it. Maya laughed. When you put it that way, I guess we are providing a pretty unique service. The most valuable service in the galaxy, Zephyros agreed. Reminder that everyone, regardless of their power or status, deserves simple kindness and respect. As Maya cleaned up for the evening, she reflected on how much had changed since that first morning when a dragon had walked into her coffee shop seeking to understand humanity's beverage rituals. She now employed staff from across the galaxy, served customers who existed in dimensions she couldn't even comprehend, and regularly mediated disputes that affected the fate of entire civilizations. But she still started every day the same way she always had, unlocking the door, turning on the espresso machine, and preparing to serve excellent coffee to whoever.